All right. So we're doing blue and yellow. We start off with yellow first. Okay. You always start off with the lighter color because we're going to make our way towards the blue. All right. So I'm going to take, you technically don't need the tray or the lid just yet. All right. So a good amount. I'm going to go straight into the yellow and put it directly onto the paper. All right. Be mindful, those of you at home, when you're painting this, if you get some paint on the table, yes, it'll come off. People here, don't worry about it. If you get paint on the desks, we just wipe it off. All right. So we're taking solid yellow and we're going halfway up. All right. In the middle, we're going to have green. On the top, we are going to have blue. Okay. So solid yellow. Put a good amount down because remember, it needs to be wet in order for it to blend with the blue that we're about to put on. What's that? I just cut mine so it fits. You can just do it in a little section, in a small section in yours. Okay. All right. So there we have the yellow. You can do two ways of doing this. We can make the green automatically, or you can put the blue instantly on the top and have it just start blending in. It's kind of your preference. Is one harder than the other? Yes. One is a little more difficult than the other. If we make the green first and then put it into the yellow, that's easier than if we go straight to the blue and start just manually mixing it. I'm going to show you how to do it the faster way, but it'll be a little harder. But I want people to kind of get an idea of how that works. All right, so I'm going to go into the blue, straight into the blue, mix it a little bit. And I'm going to take straight blue and put it on the top right here. Remember that yellow is still wet. I'm going to cover this top portion with solid blue, making sure it's nice and filled. And before I get to the yellow, I need to make sure everything's nicely covered, right? And then we're going to make the green. Remember, the yellow has to be wet in order for this to work. All right, and I'm going to rinse out my paintbrush. Matt, do you need a piece of paper? Oh, you got one? Okay. All right, and now I'm going to drag that blue down to make the green. I'm going to dry out my paintbrush. And you need to be careful because that blue is pretty dark, right? And it's going to overpower that green or that yellow pretty quick. And remember, what we want are these smooth transitions from light to dark or from one color to another without seeing those lines, which is what we practiced last week. As I'm going down towards the solid yellow, right? Notice how we're getting we got a nice dark green up here. And as we go down, we get a lighter yellow green. I'm going to wipe my paintbrush. And I'm going to focus on the yellow to the green right now. And I can still go ahead and put some more yellow on there. Actually, let me put some on here because it's getting kind of dry. So let me put solid yellow right along here. And then I'm going to move that solid yellow up towards the blue. Right now, I have green on my paintbrush. You do not want to go down to the solid yellow because then you're going to mix some of that green into that solid yellow and it won't be a solid yellow anymore. Okay? So you have to be mindful of that. So now I am wiping. And again, trying to get those smooth transitions as best I can. So I got most of those transitions out. on the bottom. Now I have to work my way up above the blue. So this blue might be a little dark. If we were to put an image, a solid black image on top of this, like the examples, you might not be able to see it up top because that blue is pretty dark. So how can we fix that? What do you think we should add to the blue? Thank you, Isaac. Yeah. So I'm going to make a lighter version of blue on my palette. And then put that in there. But again, I'm kind of rushing against time right now because that blue is drying out. So I put that lighter blue down, and I'm just moving it down the bottom of the paper to get the blending happening. So I'm wiping, remember, wiping your paintbrush is still going to be super important so there's no paint on it, and then fading it out. So this kind of blending is called wet on wet because the paint is wet and I'm applying it directly onto the paper without mixing it on the lid. At least these two down here, I had to make that lighter blue, right? So this technique is faster, but it does have a little more challenges to it than the other ones. Because again, you're mixing it on the paper itself and not on the lid like we did before, okay? All right, and now if we were to put a solid black silhouette, like the examples on the assignment page, now we'd be able to see it, right? And then all we're working towards is now just blending and getting those smooth transitions. If you can't get a smooth transition in a certain area, it's not a big deal because when you are ready to draw the black silhouette, you can have that black silhouette cover or fix some of those mistakes, right? So the goal for this right now is to figure out what colors you want to use for your gradient, number one. Number two, which gradient do you want to use? Do you want the hue to hue? Do you want, so we did a little bit of two. We did hue to tint, right? Or hue to white, or a light tint. And then we did hue to hue, so yellow to solid blue. So we kind of have two into one, right? And then you notice how much paint I put on my desk. Remember, this paint is water soluble, so you can easily wipe it off with a sponge, right? Even once it's still wet, or if it's still wet, you can just wipe it off. All right. So there's the first one, yellow to blue, and then I added some white to make that tint on the top. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the circular gradation, like the cat and the bird example on the assignment page. I'm doing it here. All right. Someone give me, let's see, they used purple on here. Let's use, I'm going to do red since we used yellow and blue already. So with this one though, for the circular gradation or gradient, we do need to mix the paint first or blend it on the lid. So we're going to use red, black, and white. We're going to start off with white and red, to make a really, really light pink. All right, so rinse out your paintbrush really well so that there's no green on it, or else when you dip it into the red, it's going to turn brown. All right, so take a good few scoops of white. My white's a little dry, so I'm going to add some water to it. And now scoop one thing of red onto that to make a pink. I might have put too much because I want it lighter than that for the center. That could be like the medium one. Scoop a little bit from this pink into that white. Put some water because that paint's drying out. And that's a good pink right there, super light. And this is the one I'm going to start off with. And then I'm going to move into this pink and into a solid red. And on the corners or the edges, I'm going to put a dark red on there. Okay. All right, so center. And remember, when we're blending, we want to overlap the paints. Remember, we want to overlap them and not just put them side by side like that. All right, so that's a good pink right there. And I'm going to go and move on to this more of a hot pink here. Put it along that circle or along that edge. Rotate my paintbrush so I get all the paint on the paper, and then make the circle bigger. All right, I'm going to wipe my paintbrush and I'm going to blend that line out. So that it fades. Whoops, looks like that lighter white or lighter pink is dried out. So I'm gonna get some more. Lighter pink and put it along that edge to fade it out. And the radial or the circular gradient is a little more difficult just because it's not more straightforward like this one is. So there. See, I'm getting rid of that line that was in the center. All right, now I'm just going to work my way out. Go to solid red. When you do this on a bigger piece of paper and you made a color already or a value, you need to make sure you have enough to fill the space. It's another reason why I'm only doing half of the paper, so I don't use as much paint. All right, so I'm working my way towards the center a little bit. Again, wipe my paintbrush. And now it's time to fade out that line. And hopefully that light pink is still wet on your paper. And again, just making our way towards the center to overlap and to fade out that line. If you need more of the lighter pink, by all means, grab some, like I just did. So if you're noticing too, I'm also holding my paper down on the corners so it doesn't move around when I'm putting the paint on or brushing or trying to fade out the edges. All right, and now I can go ahead and make a darker red. on my lid. So I'm gonna take solid red. I'm gonna do 2 scoops, or let's do 2.5 of red. And I'm gonna add a little bit of black to that red. Mix that in. And this should look kind of like a burgundy color. We just need it to be darker than the solid red. That's all. Doesn't have to be solid black. This will give us that like what's called vignetting effect along the edges. And you have a filter like this on your camera or on your phone. And a lot of social media apps also have this, where they just make the corners of the image a little darker. And the reason for that, whoops, that yellow's still kind of wet. The reason for that is to bring more attention to the stuff in the center of the image. Again, I'm just painting my desk. Not too concerned about that right now. And now same thing, wipe my paintbrush or rinse it out. And now just fade out those edges. If you don't practice this and you go straight into your gradient for your project, I guarantee you're going to have a hard time. That's why I'm showing you this practice part. So that you mess up here. I mean, some of you have already messed up on the stuff we did last week, but that's fine. I want you to mess up first so that you don't have to you don't feel like defeated when you're trying to do the major project. And you can already see how it's super light in the center, and as you move out to the sides, it gets darker, right? And that's the point. That's the whole point of the gradation. Just adding a little bit more lighter red. And then just be mindful of the paper kind of moving. Try and grab it as much as you can or hold it down. Now let me put a little more lighter pink in the center so it just looks, so it pops out a little bit more. There we go. So that's 2 gradients, right? 2 different ones. The one on the left obviously would not go up and down. Here, let me rotate it. This top gradient looks better when it's horizontal, side to side, and not up and down. The circular gradient, as you can see, it goes from a light red to a solid red to a dark red on the sides, right?